The last few years have seen some major developments in Scottish politics. We've had elections, a referendum, we're even getting a purpose-built parliament just over there. The theatre is one place that has never been shy of political discussion. 784 was founded for that very purpose and made its name with John McGrath's The Cheviot, the Stag and the Black Oil in 1973. I wasn't even born then. However, times change, and by the time Iain Reekie took over the helm in the early 90s, a new agenda had to be addressed.
If we talk about political theatre in Scotland, I think you have to talk about 784 because it was Scotland's kind of standard bearer in terms of direct political theatre.
Now 784 as a company had always fascinated me because historically they were associated with John McGrath and The Cheviot, the Stag and the Black Oil, which to me is one of the primary plays of modern Scottish theatre.
Things have changed. Things are complex in a way that they weren't complex before. The debate that the Cheviot, the Stag and the Black Oil raised in the 1970s was appropriate then. It was a very simple and clear, clear debate, if you like. By the time we got to the 90s, early 90s, well, it wasn't clear anymore. It was, you were in a situation where, entire communities had been decimated. The whole social fabric of Scotland, which had been developing for centuries, had been knocked out of kilter. Drug use was like getting endemic, unemployment was, all these kind of issues, which meant that for us to nip into a community and sort of say, well, here we are guys, this is the story and here's the answer, just wasn't working.
784 are, I suppose, similar to the Traverse in the sense that at the moment they have an artistic director committed to new writing, even though they can't produce the volume of new writing that the Traverse is funded to produce. So in that sense, in the same way as the Traverse is a resource for writers, and 784 is as well. But there are crucial differences, I think, within 784. The first and most obvious one is the fact it's a touring theatre company rather than building based.
Since then, the work has developed. We've developed outreach work in the community, which has been, like, I suppose, our contemporary answer to agitprop. And I think, we're talking about the state of political theatre in Scotland, it's become very popular now, outreach work as such. Which effectively is about saying, well, right, okay, well, we don't have any easy answers for any particular community. What we do have is a facility of drama, so therefore we can go into a certain community and say, right, well, we can give you a platform to say what you want to say.
You write a different show if you think that it has to play the Traverse for a week and the Motherwell Civic Centre, and then go and tour the Highlands or go and tour the Borders or go and end up in Skye or Lewis.
Political theatre as such in Scotland's had a fairly stormy history, I would think, and 784 has always been, certainly for the kind of last part of this century anyway, at the heart of that. In many ways, the Cheviot, the Stag and the Black Oil is sort of omnipresent in most of Scottish theatre culture, I think, in the sense that I think if you look at what the Scottish theatre is today, a lot of it was defined by that period of time in the 70s, when companies like 784 were beginning to do the work that they did.
The other difference is that it specifically has a remit to look at political issues. And this is historically from its establishment with John McGrath. And there's been a lot of argument of late about the fact that actually this tradition of political theatre hasn't been maintained, hasn't been carried on, and hasn't been revelled in the way that the good old days of the Cheviot and Stag. I think this kind of argument is actually pointless. I think it's inevitable that the company would have changed hands. I think actually under a new artistic director it's going to have a different character. 784 is still a political theatre, but Scottish politics is different, and Scottish theatre is different, therefore the output's going to be different anyway. The other thing about people bemoaning, it seems to be a kind of really quite a nostalgic thing about 70s politics and 70s political theatre, about the fact that at times where actually the politics were the most brutal right-wing politics that you can imagine, that people were wallowing in the fact that the agitprop left-wing theatre was fantastic to go along to on a Wednesday night. Frankly, I'd rather have the radical left-wing politics in government and bourgeois theatre to go along to on a Wednesday night if that was the choice I was given.
In terms of how it's changed, it's a really complicated issue because I suppose your 784s were born of a time that was in reaction against, well, ironically enough, a Labour government, come to think about it, it was the Wilson government. Went into a period of, as we all know, like 20 odd years of Thatcherism that existed within Scotland, where the whole nature Scottish society, Scottish industry, Scottish culture, Scottish economy was changed.
David Greig's Caledonia Dreaming follows 6 characters in search of an identity and in search of Sean Connery, which may or may not be the same thing, according to the Herald.
I was approached by Iain Reekie from 784 to write a play for the company, and we talked about it, and I put forward the idea that one of the things that would be really exciting to do would be to create a play in the rehearsal room. And because of timing issues, it became very clear that this play was going to be produced very, very close to a general election. As it happened, it was actually being rehearsed during the election campaign, and its first night was about 2 or 3 days, I think it was something like 2 or 3 days or a couple of weeks after the election result. So for basically nearly 2 months, I was working in a rehearsal room with a group of actors and with Iain around a structure that I had in my head, which was the idea of people in the city looking for Sean Connery. But we were getting the newspapers in every day, we were talking every day, everything that was in the air was the possibility of change. And of course in Scotland, that wasn't just about a change of direct government, it was about the possibility then of a referendum on devolution.
At that time, the Scottish issue was on the agenda a lot, the issue of self-determination. And so we were in discussion basically with Stephen Greenhorn and David Greig, just really looking at kind of these issues, you know, and sort of thinking, well, is there anything that we think could be interesting in terms of producing some work on? Eventually what happened was this created what is now to become a trilogy, which we're calling the Parliament trilogy. But that wasn't the intention at the beginning.
And I also wanted to look at the issue of Scotland and Scotland's future and what it was to be Scottish. And I wanted to use these methods, but unlike John McGrath, I felt that at this moment in time, the best way to approach that was actually to not approach it head on, but to approach it, if you like, sideways on.
Our starting point was this: how do we try and find a time, or find a world that is Scotland, but at the same time is a Scotland where all the normal rules of everyday life don't apply, a Scotland where we can fantasise for a bit and just play about with dreams, effectively, aspirations. What do people want? Where are they from? Where are they going to? What do people need? What are they interested in?
And that's why through the course of the play you'll see that there isn't a message at the bottom of it in a very direct way. It doesn't call for independence, it doesn't call for devolution, it doesn't suggest that you vote Labour or otherwise. And it also doesn't say what it is to be Scottish. But what I think it does is shows you the lives of a group of characters who are not supposed to be 100% real. They're supposed to be a little bit heightened, a little bit kind of dreamlike in a way. And the idea is that it was to capture something of what I thought was the spirit of the moment.
Scotland is modern, yet old. Urban, yet rural. Friendly, yet canny. Strong, yet compassionate. Who is it? Who's Scotland? That's the question we need to answer.